Hello everyone, this is Ben, and today we're looking at a Test 2 IELTS essay about the advantages and disadvantages of a potential approach, which is whether or not to work or travel for a year between finishing high school and beginning one's university studies. As always, I suggest that you read this essay, think about which scores you might give it, and then at the end of the video, when I give my predicted scores, we can see how closely they align with each other. So this is the introduction. If you'd like to pause, this is the first body paragraph. This is the second and last body paragraph. And finally, this is the conclusion. When deciding your scores, you should, of course, always look at the IELTS Test 2 writing band descriptors available online to the public. The public is everyone, you and me. So a quick Google search will bring these up for you. So now to look at the student's essay. Let's have a look together. So, taking a gap year after high school and before starting university studies is becoming increasingly popular in many countries. This experience can bring various advantages and disadvantages to young people who decide to take a break before entering university. So doing this is becoming more popular. I might change it to the decision to do it. I think taking a gap year is becoming increasingly common, and it's becoming an increasingly popular choice. Just a very small point. Studies is usually my studies, your studies, their studies. So I'm going to add starting one's, my apologies, one's university studies is becoming increasingly popular. This experience can bring various advantages and disadvantages to young people who decide to take a break before entering university. Well, take this kind of break. I'm just going to delete that at the end, because take a break, very unclear there. And we generally don't say entering university. We say starting university, commencing university, gaining entry to university. But the meaning is slightly different there. It's being accepted by. So it's when you're kind of made the offer, I suppose, you gain entry. It might be a good idea to add whether you think there are more advantages or disadvantages. I might just add something personally, like though I personally believe that the former outweigh the latter overall. You don't need to. You can suspend your conclusion until the end, once you've discussed it. Your kind of thesis is your personal view. You can hold that off until the conclusion. But I just feel that this introduction is a little bit short, so it might be better to make your argument here and then support it in the following paragraphs and restate it in the conclusion. So moving on, one of the most significant benefits is the opportunity to gain new experiences and perspectives. Many young people choose to travel during this period, which allows them to explore new cultures, meet new people, and learn new languages. What do you think about that? I think that is really excellent writing. I'm not going to change anything there. This experience can broaden their horizons and help them to develop their interpersonal and communication skills. You could argue help them is a bit informal, maybe something like and be conducive to the development of their interpersonal skills, or facilitate the development of their interpersonal skills. But it's not grammatically incorrect, and everything else is so good that I'm just going to leave it. I feel that interpersonal skills includes communication skills, so I will delete the communication part. Interpersonal skills includes many things, but communication skills is kind of the main aspect of interpersonal skills, I suppose. Still not changing very much here. Very high quality writing. Furthermore, young people can gain work experience during their gap year, which can help them to develop essential job skills and earn some money to fund their future. I think if you're talking about the work experience, that experience can help them develop essential job skills. But the work experience doesn't help them earn some money. The work does, but not the experience. So I think it's more develop essential job skills while earning some money. I don't think you really fund your future, but you can fund your pursuit of your goals in the future. Let's say fund their pursuits of their future goals. Like if your goal is to be a doctor, you kind of pursue that goal by going to medical school, and that costs a lot of money, so you have to fund the pursuit of your goal. However, taking a gap year also has some potential drawbacks. It's a little bit repetitive, isn't it? Taking a gap year, take a gap year, taking a gap year, take a gap year. Taking a gap year or having a gap year is what we say in the UK, which is where I was born. As far as I know, Americans usually say year off. They don't generally say gap year in the USA. So I'll change it just so it's a bit less repetitive. It does stand out. Something like this can be nice, just saying something like during this period. One disadvantage is the risk of losing academic momentum. Students who take a gap year may find it challenging to return to a structured learning environment after being out of school for an extended period. They may also find it difficult to adapt to the rigorous academic demands of university life. Additionally, taking a gap year can be expensive, especially if students choose to travel overseas. Young people who take a gap year must plan carefully and ensure that they have sufficient funds to cover their living expenses during this time. This is, again, excellent. I don't even feel the need to change anything, really. I could argue that particularly is a little bit more formal. I could argue that being out of school is a little informal. And it might be better to say not engaged in formal education, for example. But it's just such high quality writing overall. I find it challenging to return to a structured learning environment. The risk of losing academic momentum. Difficulty adapting to the rigorous academic demands of university life. Really fantastic writing. Having the requisite money to cover their living expenses during this time, as well as the tuition fees. So if their parents aren't paying for their university education, they may need to cover their tuition fees as well as living expenses like housing expenses. I suppose that could be added. But I don't want to be too picky because the writing is very good. One thing that a lot of people struggle with is developing the idea. It's very fully developed. extended, well-supported ideas, which is what this does. Relevant, extended, supported. So the main point, some drawbacks. One is this. One is this. So what's the first one? Risk of losing academic momentum. It's not memorized. I suppose it could be copied because the quality is so good it could be copied and pasted. But whoever originally wrote this understands English very well. Using this good language and then explaining it. Why would they lose academic momentum? Out of school for an extended period, find it challenging to return to the structured learning environment of a classroom, for example. And at university life is a step up in terms of the academic demands from high school. It's a step up from high school. Second point, expensive. Yeah, it's developed well. I just think they might wish to consider that living expenses may have to be paid in addition to the tuition fees if students have to pay their own tuition fees. But again, you don't have a huge amount of time to write these essays, so I'm not going to be too picky about that. In conclusion, taking a gap year can have both advantages and disadvantages for young people. Ultimately, the decision to take a gap year, well, it's a bit repetitive, isn't it? The decision on, over, about whether or not to do so. Can just use do so to avoid repeating the same verb, the same activity. The decision about whether or not to do so is a personal one and depends on individual circumstances such as financial resources, personal goals, and academic readiness. Again, excellent writing there. By weighing the pros and cons of a gap year, students can make informed decisions that will best serve their interests and goals. This last part, absolutely excellent. Well, it's actually way up. But weigh up the pros and cons is very informal. So weighing up the merits and demerits is much more formal. You wouldn't say merits and demerits in speaking, but you could for writing. And arguably weighing up is a bit more informal speaking style. I think something like by carefully considering the merits and demerits. And because the merits and demerits can be different for everyone, I might just add the word potential. The possible merits and demerits. Because the point is, someone might take a year off and actually go to the library and self-study every day. And that will make them maybe more ready to adapt to the rigorous academic demands of university life. Other people might just travel the world for the whole year and do no studying at all. So that could be considered a waste of time and leave them with very little money remaining. So I think there are potential advantages and disadvantages to taking a gap year, but it depends on how we actually do it. Okay, so moving on to the scores. Very high overall, 8.5. Grammar 9, vocabulary 9. Cohesion and coherence 8, task achievement 9. Task response, as we talked about, fully addresses all parts of the task, yes. Very developed, relevant, fully extended, and well-supported ideas. I could argue that the financial implications could be extended more, but again, they're extended enough, I think. Cohesion and coherence, used in such a way that it attracts no attention, skillfully manages paragraphing. You could argue that it attracts some attention, I think, for task achievement and grammar. And cohesion and coherence. I would give them maybe either a low 9 or a high 8. For cohesion and coherence, I went for 8 because of issues we've already talked about. I felt that like there was a lot of repetition of the same phrases, one that really stood out. Not phrases, more just this particular phrase, to be honest. It's repeated too much, and that's why I've changed it by using different vocabulary and using other cohesive features, like to do so rather than repeating to take a gap year. And that's a shame because it could have easily been a 9 if it just had a little bit more variety to attract no attention. Lexical resource, sophisticated control of lexical features. Yeah, absolutely, very impressive writing. It was native-like, so I wonder if parts of this were copied. It's not really my concern if they were copied. Copying and pasting, just a total waste of time, but really excellent lexis, excellent language. Grammatical range and accuracy, wide range of structures with full flexibility and accuracy. Rare minor errors occur only as slips. I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, I made almost no changes at all in general, but I can't see any grammatical mistakes that I changed. So I wonder how closely your predicted scores align with mine. As always, thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.